heard a couple years ago at a seminar, and it really stuck with me. And it was like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking how often we do that. And I'm a big goal-setting person. I break my goals down by quarter, and then my whole brain reads like an outline. I have everything broken down to the books that I want to read, and I check in with it quarterly. But when I go to look 5-10 years from now, it's a little bit harder for me because I see different paths.
This is the Turn Your Life Around podcast, and I'm the 180 Lady. I've been helping people turn their lives around since 2007 as the founder and CEO of a large mental health company. The purpose of this podcast is to have meaningful conversations with old friends and new friends, everyday people just like you and me, about how they turn their lives around. We'll discuss all things mental health, fitness, finances, relationships, parenting, spirituality, you name it. My hope is that you can take something away that will encourage you today. I'm your host, Sarah Coates. Are you ready to turn your life around? Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. We have a really special guest, April Stevens. You may have heard her on the radio. I hear her commercials sometimes. We're chatting with old friends and new friends, having meaningful conversations about how they turn their lives around. And so welcome to the pod, April.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
I'll let you introduce yourself.
What do you want to know?
Everything.
So I've been in real estate for 18 years. Absolutely love the career of real estate. And as of late, I am a county commissioner going on my 3rd year for Johnston County. So very honored to represent our county in that way.
Now, are you from Johnston County?
I am not. I like to say that I am now. I'm originally from Garner, so not too far. I just moved a little further across the line. Wanted to buy a house that I could afford when Johnston County was more affordable, I should say, back in the day. So I've been there for going on 22 years.
And so how long have you been in real estate?
18 years.
Okay, so a long time.
Yes.
What did you do before real estate?
I was actually in the Army. So I joined the Army right after high school. I didn't have money for college, and I really wanted to be a nurse from a young age.
Okay.
And I used that as a way to use the GI Bill to go to college. And when I got out, I still needed to work.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up working full time for the Army as in the aviation and safety. So it was a very unique blend. I was the aviation and safety secretary. So I trained combat lifesavers, did health screenings, and scheduled helicopter missions.
Oh.
I don't know why they put those two together, but it was a very fun job.
And how long were you in the Army?
I was in 4 years active, and then I did 4 inactive. So I
Yeah.
could have been called up, but fortunately was not.
Okay. Yeah, I think you mentioned that on our pre-screening when we were talking before the podcast of an interesting story about being pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So I found out I met my husband in the middle of all of that, and we found out we were pregnant, and 2 weeks later, my unit got alerted. So this was right after 9/11. And when I went into the Army, I was really hoping to go somewhere. I'm an only child, pretty much never really left North Carolina. And so I was excited to travel with the military, but not pregnant, unfortunately. My unit ended up getting deployed and literally deployed on the day my daughter was born. She came 4 days early on my husband's birthday, on the day my unit deployed for the first time since World War I. They had not been deployed. So I took that as a sign, a major sign that I may have a bigger role stateside at home than traveling. So it was a really hard decision. Fortunately, because of the circumstance, I stayed in another 7-8 months and then got out the following May after she was born, which is how I ended up in real estate.
So let's talk about the emotions. I'm just thinking with my therapist brain, like I can't imagine what you were feeling, your unit being called up and you having been with them and then not being able to go. What was that experience like for you?
It was really tough. My husband and I, we went back and forth over, because up until she was born, I was planning to leave.
Yeah.
I knew as pregnant as I was, they were going to send me to South Carolina. I didn't process. They send me back and then I would go. And there was conversation about when she was 2 months old about sending me to Afghanistan. And it was a very hard conversation. And I think my best friend summed it up perfectly when I told her I felt like I was letting my unit down. I felt like I was letting the Army down. And she said, but look at what you are as one person to the Army and look at what you are as one person to her.
Wow.
So that was really powerful for me, and it changed my mindset. And I realized there was a lot I could do here and still help. And since time has gone on, I've talked to a lot of people in my unit. And although they were a very important part of the mission and the deployment, we were the rear hospital. So
Yeah.
they never really saw anything. They
Mm.
said they built a lot of ramps and buildings and things like that. So hindsight, I'm glad that I did not miss her first year, her first 18 months with regards to that. And again, I'm just a big believer. I've always said everything happens for a reason and
Yeah.
God has a bigger plan for us. And I think there was no doubt that my plan was to stay here and be that one person to her.
Yeah. So what was it like being a female in the military in those years?
I loved it. I'm not going to lie and say I was quite the private Benjamin. Again, just being an only child, being somewhat sheltered. And it was an experience that I definitely needed. I grew thick skin. I
Yeah.
went from being in a household of one to being in a bay of 60. And everyone was from a different walk of life, which
Yeah.
was really interesting to me. I had to figure out where I fit in. I had to make friends because there are a lot of enemies to be made when 60 women are in a bay sleeping together and we're together 24/7.
Right.
I made some lifelong friendships that I'm so still grateful for to this day, but it was definitely a unique experience. It made me realize how tough that I can be when I have to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure you've carried that into your next career. So tell us how you got into real estate.
So I responded to an ad for a part-time job with a general
Really?
contractor who was looking for an office manager. And again, I had been a secretary, so I was used
Yeah.
to doing a lot of the paperwork. And fortunately, it's very close to home. It's actually on the same office where your place is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great. I was a part-time secretary for a general contractor, and they mainly did commercial, but they also built homes. And I just loved all of the marketing side of it. And one day he said, well, if you're interested, you want to go to real estate school, I'll send you.
Oh, wow.
So I literally that was back when it was at night school.
Yeah.
And at Johnston Community College. And I went to night school for real estate. It took 6 months and got my license, and kind of the rest is history.
Yeah.
But it's a career I never thought I could love as much as I do. But it's just another way of helping people
Totally.
through
Yeah.
tough times.
Yeah. So my husband's going to laugh when I share this, what I'm getting ready to share. I was a therapist, and actually I was a school counselor when he and I decided to go take a real estate course, and we thought we would do real estate, and I could not pass the exam. And at the time I remember being like, what? He passed. No problem. I couldn't pass it. And I felt discouraged, of course, at that moment. But looking back, I'm like, God didn't want me to be a real estate agent. He had these other plans. But I think it's just so par for the course when things like not passing a real estate exam or not passing whatever just redirects you to the path you're supposed to be on.
Absolutely.
And so I always laugh because I talk with lots of real estate agents, and I just chuckle at myself because I could not pass that exam.
The good news, bad news is nothing about that exam is what teaches us actually how to do real
Isn't
estate.
that usually how it is with most things?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny in that way. But again, it's all about law.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. So you've been in real estate now, you said 18 years.
Yes. August will be 18.
What are some of your favorite things about doing your career?
The best part, what I tell everyone is the best part is no day is the same. The worst part is no day is the same. So
Right.
you don't know if it's, you wake up and you put yourself out of business every day that you do your job. So you constantly have to dig. You constantly have to be looking for more business, more people to help, more opportunities. It's not for the faint at heart. That's
Yeah.
for sure. A lot of people get into it, think I'm just going to do it as a side hustle or it's going to be easy money. And while some transactions can be easier than other, I think if you look at the true volume of what we are actually doing, how we were impacting people's lives and
Right.
affecting their lives, it's a big weight. It's very important that we are on top of our game all the time because everybody needs something differently at different times in different ways, and you have to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
We have this joke, obviously you are a therapist, but we have this joke that we're like 80% therapist, 20% real estate agent, because we have literally saved marriages. I have had many clients that are on the verge of breakdown, and we're like, okay, guys, let's just talk about the first time we met and why we were excited, and let's remember the why. And when they get so overwhelmed and frustrated, it's our job to bring them back in and focus on what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
But it's one of those jobs that emotions are constantly high and there's so many balls in the air that have to be moving at all times. It's a lot.
When do you ever have time off or a break? I just feel like you're probably constantly getting buzzed on the phone.
We are. I wish I could tell you that I was one of those that it's like my phone is off at 7 and I'll
Yeah.
return calls tomorrow morning at
But then you
9.
miss a sale.
It's not even that. What if somebody literally is having that breakdown?
Right.
I am the person that can bring them back to center.
Mhm.
So while I do have some boundaries as far as that goes, and I've worked my way into having an amazing team
Yeah.
where there's not all the stress all the time. It's a different stress because
Yeah.
now I'm managing people and helping them with their careers. It's one of those where 9 times out of 10, it's worth it. My daughter will tell you that she grew up with mom going, one more minute, just one more minute. She's also heard people on the phone crying and being excited and going through those emotions, and me being able to be there in that moment is very important. While also being able to accomplish things and make things for her. So there is to a degree a flexible schedule, but you have to be very diligent about making it that way.
Yeah, I was just thinking like you have to be probably really a strong independent worker, be able to manage your time and schedule effectively. It seems like it's very much a self-management career.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And everybody says you can't multitask efficiently. There are different, I think, ways to multitask. And I tell people all the time, there's no longer, in my opinion, work-life balance. It's all work-life integration.
Yeah.
I didn't miss anything at Abby's school. I didn't miss anything that she did, performances. We were able to travel with her as she got older. However, she knew that when we got home, sometimes mom was on the computer while she was cooking supper. Well, after I put her to bed, I was up on the computer till late hours, and that's just what had to be done.
Yep. No, I totally get that. I like that work-life integration. I think the old school thought maybe 5-10 years ago was work-life balance. That's just, there's no way you can do 50% personal, 50% work. When you're an entrepreneur, when you're building your own brand, working for yourself, you really do give and take. And like you said, maybe it's late hours so that you could go to the soccer game or the recital or whatever. That's the integration part. Yeah,
Yes.
that's good.
And it's been good for her to see. And she has a great work ethic now because of it. And she'll say it's because I watched my parents work so hard. It wasn't like as many times I wish we could just turn it off. There were times that we just couldn't turn it off. And she saw that.
Yeah. So when did you start building out a team and you were running that?
About 10 years ago, she used to do pageants when she was younger, and she had won Little Miss North Carolina, one of the titles. And I just remember sitting in the auditorium, and she had worked so hard for this, and my phone was going off. I had to write 2 offers. I had to do this. I was trying to call people back in between what she was doing. And I felt like I was omnipresent, and it was really hurting my heart. And I remember I walked outside, and there was an agent that I'd partnered with to help me. And I was like, okay, that's it. We've got to start a team. I need help full time. I need an assistant full time. I need to be able to check out and know that there are other people that can be me and jump into this role and help our clients.
Yeah.
And so I started talking to other team leaders and getting some really great mentorship and advice, and said, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And I learned a lot in real estate, everybody becomes a team leader because they're busy, and they find other people that are busy and say, come be busy with me. That's not the way it should be done. Hindsight, teams were not a huge thing back then when I started. They are now, and there's a lot more groundwork that has been laid. I would have done things differently, but at the end of the day, you fell forward. And now I'm able to help other team leaders not make the same mistakes I did. And I've really been diving a lot lately into what is the word I'm looking for? Making yourself better, professional development and leadership, because no one teaches you how to actually lead people when you get into these roles.
Right.
And so that's something that's very important to me now, is that I am not just a manager, not just a team leader, but a good leader overall.
Yeah, I think that's what you just said is so true, because obviously I'm in a leadership position running my company. And yeah, I didn't go to school for leadership. I went to be a therapist. You trained to be a real estate agent. Like, you didn't set out probably to run this big company and be the head of it, but it's happened that way. And so how do you learn through that, fail forward, and just stay on your game and stay on top of it?
I'm constantly learning. I'm always going to conferences, leadership, watching trainings. I'm so glad that so many trainings are on Zoom now. I think that is one of the best things that came out of COVID. I hate to say it, is that there's so many opportunities now to get in rooms with other people without actually having to travel and miss work, because like it's still that integration piece where I'm trying to work on myself, but also work on my team. So I'm just constantly learning and finding ways to better myself for my agents agents and finding those gaps. That's something I've learned a lot about in the past couple of years is gaps change throughout the years. Gaps change throughout stages of your business. And how can you continually work on what those gaps are?
What do you think? So let's just talk for a minute about leadership. What do you think is maybe the greatest challenge that you've overcome running your company or being in leadership?
Coming from more of a servant position. In the military, I wasn't in a leadership position. I was more in a servant position. I wanted to be a nurse because I wanted to be a servant. So I definitely feel like I have a servant's heart, hence the county commissioner role. And so it was really hard to elevate myself to feel like I'm a leader over others. I tend to put myself in their shoes more often than not.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really important that you are staying at this higher level, and not because you're better than anyone, but staying at this higher level so that you can look at how everything is going and focus on right people, right seat, what needs to be happening in the business. So working on the business is something that's hard when you have a servant's heart because you're used to constantly being in it. That, and I have a tendency to be one of those, I can just do it myself. Type of person. And it's hard to delegate. So those are my biggest leadership struggles.
Yeah, I think definitely like when you're in that role, you can see the big picture. And I totally jive with you on the servant leadership, the servant heart, but you do have to delegate when you're running the show. You cannot do it all.
And I've always ran my team. What I tell them is I'm a football team and we're a football team and I'm just the quarterback. So we can't get the ball across the line unless somebody throws it to me or I pass it to someone else. And I'm very hyper aware of that. So I'm not trying to run my team like a dictatorship. I want us to be a true team in every sense of the word.
What are some trends you're seeing in real estate right now?
Oh, that is a buzzword
Is it?
in our industry right now. It just seems like there's all these social media trends, of course, which I'm very grateful for social media. When I first got started, Facebook was just coming out. So I was able to take advantage of Facebook and use it to promote my listings, to promote properties. But now social media has taken on its whole other animal. To the fact that we're here. We're no longer just writing contracts and showing houses. We're now supposed to be TikTok famous. And, we are supposed to have YouTube channels and everything else. Be influencers in this space as well. And it's hard to be all things all the time. And I'm seeing some of my own agents struggle with that, but they're starting to get some traction. They want to cultivate some of their own business through social media, which is great and which I'm championing for. It's just finding that balance. Not only that, but thanks to social media and the internet, there's so much good and bad information out there. And a lot of consumers think that they know so much already, or one person they follow says this and this, another person they follow says this. And we are almost constantly on the defense of, I know you heard this, but that's not how we do it in North Carolina. Or I know you're used to this, or this is what you saw on the internet, but actually this is what we're seeing. So we're constantly, it's like the internet is a double-edged sword. We have to find our place in it. We have to take up space in it while also fighting some bigger voices that are creating a lot of noise in our spaces.
That's fascinating. I see the same thing in the therapy world, like TikTok. There's some really great therapists on TikTok, a bunch of pop psychology, and that's not applicable or that's not real world. I'm sure you're combating the same.
Absolutely. And there's just so many sites and companies all the time trying to put real estate agents out of business. And if you've ever truly had a realtor have your back, you know what our value is. We are way more than door openers. And I was telling somebody that the other day, they're like, this just all went so smoothly. And I was like, that means I did my job, because you have no idea how much we are juggling behind the scenes that you never see. And so I hope it does look easy when we get to the closing table. But if we pulled back the curtain and you saw everything that we actually did, our clients would stay in constant panic because we touch a transaction an average of 275 times from start to finish.
Wow.
So if they saw every touch, every communication, every email, every back and forth, they think they're overwhelmed with the amount of communication. You should see everything that we're doing on the back end.
This is how much I don't know about real estate. A individual real estate agent, how many transactions are they working at a time on average?
On average, anywhere from 3 to 7.
Okay,
Once
yeah.
you get past 7, it starts to be a little out of control,
Right.
unless you have a great inside team, which we do. We have listing coordinator, buyer coordinator. We have a director of experience, so she helps with some of our client stuff. So we have a really great system in place. So it doesn't feel like hair on fire all the time,
Yeah.
but you keep in mind all the people that we have to coordinate and work with throughout a transaction, whether it be on the sales side or the buy side, lining up photographers, measurements,
Right.
coordinating appraisers, and then home inspectors and everything else. And these are not just one touches. We go back into a transaction over and over again. Whereas the client, it feels like a lot of hurry up and wait. It feels
Yeah.
like they talk to us for 3 days straight, and then there's this lull. And then we're talking to each other for another 24 hours straight, working on this, that, and the other. And then there's this lull. There is no lull for us
you, yeah.
behind the scenes. We're constantly like a game of chess, making moves in the background to make sure we all end up at the finish line.
So when are you going to add a social media manager to your team?
Oh, when I let go of control issues.
Yeah.
So no, we do have a company that we use that helps with some of our social media marketing. But as far as myself, I am just too hands-on for that.
Yeah.
And I love social media. I do love some of those aspects. And so I always want it to be genuine. I've had people in the past back and forth, and it has worked to a degree, but I haven't found somebody who can do it all yet. And there's multiple facets. There's the team, which I love having somebody manage because they put out information that is very team oriented. So all of our communities, all of our listings, team anniversaries, team birthdays, where we're at, events, things like that. But when it comes to the individuals, I want them to have their own personalities. And then the same thing with myself. It's hard to find one person because I do feel like I'm 3 people at any given time. I'm April, the team leader. I'm April, the county commissioner. And then I'm also just April, the mom, April, the wife, April, the doing who knows what all the time. So it's hard to find somebody that can be that person for all 3 of me.
Yeah, for sure.
From
Now, are you actually involved in any transactions nowadays, or are you really just managing?
Yep, I'm still in production, especially when it comes to new construction, especially some of my past clients that have used us over and over again. And I think it's important to stay relevant, to stay in the weeds a bit. Now, I will tell a lot of my teammates, if you're looking for advice on paperwork, I'm not your person because I do have an amazing team that does all my paperwork. I'm really just involved with the people part now, which is always where I wanted to be.
Right.
I still love my people. So that's important to me. So I'm 75% out of production, but I'm still in it so that I stay relevant and I keep my hands in it to make sure that I know what's going on in the market day to day while also watching the market and the industry at a 10,000-foot view.
Yeah. Do you think there has been any slowdown with the increase in rates? Have you noticed any changes there?
There's been a slowdown, but it was almost necessary. It was very needed slowdown. It's so funny because people are still running around like the sky is falling. And I've been there. I got my license just before the recession. So I know what slow looks like. I know what a recession looks like. And all this is a normalization of the market. Everybody is screaming right now. But when I bought my house at 20 years old, the interest rates were 8.5%, and it was glorious. It was great that I could get out of paying rent on a 2-bedroom townhome to have my own 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house and start growing my equity. And that was, at the end of the day, changed my financial picture, being able to grow the equity in that house to buy my second house to now be in the house that we're in now.
Yeah.
Pretty much debt free.
Right.
It's because I was able to pay myself for being a homeowner. And that's something I feel like people are not taking into consideration. At the end of the day, you're getting that money back 9 times out of 10. Even when we sold and the market was not that great, we still made money on every turn. And I know that's not for everyone, but the rates are not bad. And the inventory is still way too low. So we have about a month and a half worth of inventory on the market, and that is still a huge seller's market.
Okay.
Nationally, historically, if you had between 4 and 6 months of inventory, that was a normal market.
Oh.
So a lot of people don't know that. If we look at the industry as an average, we are still way below where we should be.
Interesting.
We never bounced back as far as the amount of homes on the market pre-COVID. We're still, actually, I just went to an economic forum again because I'm always learning last week. And in the triangle, we are 35% below pre-COVID numbers of homes on the market where we should be.
Huh.
So the thing that it's made interesting though is our amount of realtors is almost doubled.
Oh, wow.
So it's making our industry a lot harder
Yeah.
because there are more people that are vying for less clients. And I will
Fascinating.
tell people during COVID, it was like a pot of boiling water with crabs in it. If you've ever watched crabs, it seems like one claws up or one climbs up and another pulls it back
Yeah.
down. We
Yeah.
have seen that happen throughout our industry. And it's not been a good thing, unfortunately. I've always said that it's a little too easy to get your real estate license.
hmm
The class is not easy.
Except for those that can't pass the
No.
exam.
As soon as I said that, I was like, take it back, take it back.
It's okay. It's okay.
No, the class is not easy. The sometimes getting into the business, if you're only working
Right.
your sphere,
Right.
it can seem easy. I tell people your first year is always your hardest or your easiest. And either way, it gives you an unrealistic insight on what your entire real estate career is going to be like. Because your first year, everybody that knows and loves you is using you. And you're
Yep.
like, what? This is easy.
Yeah.
Or it's so hard and you're scraping to sell every property. So that's why most people don't make it through the first 2 years of real estate is because one is one way and one is the other typically.
Right.
It's really important to know this is a long game and you constantly have to be learning.
Mhm.
And I come across a lot of agents that are happy just doing the bare minimum, and that is not okay,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
I also am not a fan of part-time agents. I know that gets
Yeah.
me a lot of flack, and it's not that some people can't do it.
Mhm.
However, it all depends on what your motivation is.
Right.
And if you can truly manage being able to help clients while also managing a full-time job. And I just see that on the listing side. I see it so often where an agent is working for someone and they have a full-time job and it's after 5 until I can ever get answers from them.
Right.
And their hair on fire, but I've been doing this all day long. But now to them, they only have an hour to get all of their work done before they have to start dinner or go to soccer practice or something else because they just got out of their
Yeah.
full-time job.
Yeah.
So that is the only thing that makes it really hard on us as an industry is when agents are not treating this like a full-time career like it should be.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'm just thinking from the consumer side, if you have a part-time agent and you can't get a hold of that person with your question until 5 or 6, that would feel like that would be a deficit for me as the consumer.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Wow.
makes it hard all the way around.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So shifting gears, you've mentioned county commissioner a couple times. So tell us how you got into that.
Fate, again, another everything happens for a reason moment. So again, I was serving at an early age. I was very close with my grandmother, who I call my nanny, and she was a servant's heart. I saw her, my grandfather started a nonprofit organization up in Northampton County called NCAP, Northampton County Citizens Against Pollution. Northampton County is one of the poorest counties in the state and has been for a long time. And when you see poor counties, a lot of big industries try to move in there and try to overrun these counties. There's cheap workforce, there is cheap land typically, and they saw that and tried to counteract it by getting a group of citizens together. And I was fortunate to be a part of that. It was a farming community. My grandfather was a hog farmer until he was put out of business by a large hog farm that came into the county. And that was one of the fights we lost, unfortunately, because they did come in right behind our property. And we still live to see the smells, the water issues that it created. So it's unfortunate, but they were just great galvanizers and got a group of people together to fight these large industries. So it was the hog farm. And then a few years later, it was a incinerator plant. And I just remember feeling helpless. I was, I think, 12, and my grandparents were holding these meetings at their house, and I was, witness to all this. And I just kept saying, how can I help?
Yeah.
And my nanny said, just write a letter to our congressmen and our senators. So I did. I sat down, I wrote a letter, and I talked about how unfair it seemed that my grandparents had to spend all of their free time fighting these industries that were trying to ruin their way of life. My grandparents lived on the same farm that my grandfather was born on. Had been in the family for centuries. I put my heart into it the only way I knew how. And it got attention because I was 12 and I cared about these things. I remember one weekend we got everybody together in Northampton County. We took buses and vans and we all drove down to Raleigh, to the Capitol, which I lived in Raleigh at the time. So that wasn't a big deal for me, but for them it was. And we led rallies down at the Capitol building. And I have videos of me standing behind this podium. I'm like 12 years old and I'm just giving this speech that I'd written that I thought it was unfair that these big businesses were putting hog farmers out of business. And yeah, so I guess I think that's not, I guess, I know that's where I got my love for serving at an early age. My grandmother ran for county commissioner and she didn't win, but she was the first female to ever cause a runoff. So she was always proud of that. But I remember seeing her campaign and the signs being made, and there was no social media back then. It was completely grassroots. I was in her car as we were going around passing out pamphlets and flyers and standing in front of the grocery stores. So I remember all that. And I just remember always knowing at a young age that I wanted to make a difference, no matter how small or how big that was. And when I started my career, I was in Civitan. I've always been a member. You name it, every board, every chamber, I've probably been on a board somewhere. Similar to yourself. Just we love to get involved. I've always said that I like to have a seat at the table. If you want to have a voice, that's what you got to do. You got to show up. Sometimes you have to bring your own chair. I had it on my goals list for 10 years from now. And then I saw the ad come out and I was, this can't be real. There's an opening for a seat for county commissioner. And I thought, I don't know that I have the time. I don't know that I have the experience. I don't know that I have the knowledge, but if it's God's will, then I'm going to go for it. So I literally called the county because I was like, just to be sure, this is in my district. And she was like, yes, ma'am. So I filled out my application and waited, and 12 other people had applied.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, for a seat that typically there's not a huge, overwhelmingly run, for lack of a better word. 12 people had applied. And so I just thought it's not meant to be. But then I got the call that I made the top 4, so that they were going to interview me. And I was interviewed by the party and by the county commissioners that were already there. And I just remember praying that morning. I'm like, Jeremiah 29:11, if this is in your path for me, if this is in your plan, then so be it. And I just went in there and did my best self and got the call the next day that they felt like I was a good candidate and asked if I wanted the position, and I was sworn in that Monday.
Oh my goodness.
So it was very fast. And it's been like drinking from a fire hose ever since, but I've loved every minute of it. I then had to run again because the raising party was able to put somebody on the ballot as well because I was appointed. So that was my first campaign trail, for lack of a better word.
So when was that?
That was 2.5 years ago.
Okay, yes, that's right. Okay.
Let's see. I was appointed in April and then it was on the ballot in November.
All right.
So luckily I won my seat. And then I had to run again this year for my seat because the term is up in November. So I had to start campaigning again last year in order to be on the ballot in May. And fortunately, no one filed against me. So I will be on the ballot again in November, but I don't have an opponent. So I get to keep my seat for the next 4 years.
Wow. Fantastic. Did you even know you'd be in politics?
Absolutely not. Everybody's, what got you into politics? I'm like, I did not get into politics. I got into serving, which politics is a part of it. And I'm learning very quickly. So anybody who's come across me in the past 2.5 years, give me grace. I'm learning that part very fast. I had done some grassroots stuff for some of the candidates that I had believed in that were going to be great for the county as far as working the polls, passing out flyers. But that was my experience in politics up until this point. So I learned very quickly. Luckily, had a lot of good mentors around me that helped. And for the most part, I just stay in my lane. That's what I've always done in my business world, in my entrepreneurship journey, is I just stay in my lane. I focus on the things that I know about. I worry about the things that I care about, and that's where I stay instead of trying to get involved and do all the things. I work the polls completely by myself. Again, I also have an issue with delegating. But it was just, I wanted to be the one that the people saw. This was my first time running, and it was important to me that I understood every piece of it, from boots on the ground all the way up to being the candidate.
How many people are on the board of the county commissioner?
7.
Okay. I gotcha. And how many male to female?
I am the only female.
That's what I thought.
And a third in Johnston County's history. So I'm very excited. There should be another one joining us in November. So I'm very excited to have some more estrogen on the board. But I will say this board has been fantastic to work with. They welcomed me with open arms. They've all taken time to give me their advice, their knowledge. They are all very knowledgeable in different ways. And so I'm very grateful for the board that we have. I was very nervous coming on, being young younger than most of them. I think I am the youngest to date. And that was something that I was just really nervous about, not having just the same life experience, business experiences that they had. But I feel like I have found my voice now, and it's taken me some time, but also out of respect. I have always said that sometimes you have to earn your voice. I've, again, sat on many boards where I didn't agree with the way things were done, but I realized that I needed to get on there and learn why things were the way they were before I just came in guns blazing trying to change things. And once I figured out the why, I was able to figure out the how, and then felt, okay, here's my opinion and here's how I think we can make things better. And so I took a little time because there was a lot to learn. And
Yeah, I believe it.
when I first came in, we were passing the capital improvements plan, the comprehensive land use plan, the budget, and a school bond.
Wow.
And I just remember, I felt like all I did, if I didn't talk on the phone before, I talk on the phone all day now. And you name it, my phone rings from everything from school board complaints and questions to a horse that people think are being mistreated to people not being able to get a septic permit to you name it. Our phone rings for everything right now. But I'm really glad to be able to help on every level. But I'm not kidding when I say drinking from a fire hose.
I've just your examples you just shared right there. It's like all over the place.
All over the place.
The people reaching out to you. Wow. Yeah, it's a good thing that you have a servant's heart, because that is definitely what it sounds like your current role is, serving others and helping the people of Johnston County.
Absolutely.
So where do you think you go from here?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I believe in chapters. I
Okay.
have chapter books. I heard a couple years ago at a seminar, and it really stuck with me. And it was like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking how often we do that. And I'm a big goal setting person. I break my goals down by quarter, and then my whole brain reads like an outline. I have everything broken down to the books that I want to read. And I check in with it quarterly. But when I go to look 5-10 years from now, it's a little bit harder for me because I see different paths.
Yeah.
So I literally have what I tell people 2 chapter 10s in my book within the next 10 years. A lot depends on my daughter. She's our only one, and she's pursuing a career in music.
Yep.
I've always said a lot depends on her. She lives in Nashville, Tennessee now. If she decides she wants to travel, well, then I want to do a lot of traveling with her, or at least just following her around.
Yeah.
I have coaching in my future. That's something that I can do remotely. I bought the podcast stuff. I haven't started one yet, but I've got the name for it, and I want to do a podcast as well.
Do it.
So I've got a couple of things in that direction, but then I also have if she comes back home and wants to work with us, or just comes back home, I have a 10-year goal that says maybe I do want to do something further in politics. So maybe I do want to help on a larger scale. But right now I am looking to see how I can focus my energy helping hyper locally, and then seeing if there's a place for that to do that on a broader scale.
Yeah.
So I'm learning myself right now. What does that look like? And then I'll decide. So for right now, I have 2 10-year and 5-year goals list, depending on what she does and what our business does.
That's awesome. It reminds me of those adventure books that kids read, and they could pick this or pick that. It's like how your chapters are going to play out. That is awesome. I love your enthusiasm, your drive. I love your excitement for what you do. And of course, I'm a Johnston County resident, so I love that you are passionate about serving Johnston County folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for
and
having
sharing.
me.
We admire your leadership. And of course, I always look at female business owners and entrepreneurs and always secretly cheering them, maybe secretly or out loud, cheering them along.
I think you do a good job cheering us on out loud. I've seen you sponsor a lot of women's events, and it's very appreciated and noticed.
Yeah. Awesome. Quick plug. If you want to share a little bit about the April Stevens team, how people can find you if they have a need.
Absolutely. On social media, it's April Stevens Realtor pretty much everywhere, or the April Stevens team. Caveat, my last name is spelled Stephens. So it's spelled different than it sounds. But yeah, I would love to connect on all platforms. And yeah, thank you for being here. I'm so honored.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again. Thanks for listening. If you like what you've been hearing in any of the other episodes, we ask that you like, subscribe, or follow. And of course, most of all, share this with your friends and family so we can all together help people turn their lives around. Thanks again. Hi, everyone. I appreciate you taking time to listen. These days we live in feel stressful, challenging, and maybe even chaotic. I'm really passionate about putting out positive content that will encourage and inspire others. I ask that you like, follow, subscribe, and even give us a 5-star review. Most of all, share this with your friends and family so together we can help people turn their lives around.